Great. Well, welcome everyone to this session and hello. This is an hour-long session where we have the group of us talking about specifically women in coffee. And it's part of a celebration that Algie is doing, celebrating 25 years since the first Fairtrade espresso was brought to the UK. So just before we kick off, I do need to go through some housekeeping. So we are recording this session. And how the session is going to work is we're going to have a discussion, the group of us, for the first 30 minutes, and then we're going to open up to Q&A. So please do start thinking through questions and pop them in the chat. So just to introduce myself, first of all, so I'm Kerrina Thorogood, and I'm the Commercial Director at the Fairtrade Foundation. And today we are talking about women in particular, the opportunities that coffee presents women, but also the challenges that women face every day. We're going to be talking about what the opportunities in kind of growing coffee, but also what coffee does to uplift people in their wider community. So a lot to discuss. Algie, Fairtrade, and M&S work very closely together through Fairtrade and on women's empowerment. And gender equality is a particular focus. And we do that through the Fairtrade standards, and we do that through Fairtrade programs and broader activities. So what we want to do today is really unpick that. You know, what is it about a Fairtrade certified farm that makes that gender equality more balanced? What is it about the Fairtrade farms that make women more empowered? And kind of to delve into those details, what the problems are and what the solutions are. So I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion. I'm joined by 4 women who all work in coffee, but come at it from different perspectives. So based at different parts of the supply chain, in different geographies, from different cultures. And I think bringing those different perspectives will enable a really rich discussion, which I'm really looking forward to. So just to introduce everyone in turn. So first of all, we've got Luzmila Loayza from the cooperative Agraria Frontera in Peru. And Luzmila is a logistics manager and, you know, is a woman herself working in coffee, but also works very closely with, women smallholders as well. And talk about her perspectives there. Then we have Justine, who's from Fairtrade Africa. Justine is our senior program officer based in Uganda, and she's our gender expert for East and Central Africa. So Justine can bring some of her perspectives from working with smallholders in coffee supply chains in Africa. Deborah comes to us from M&S, where she's the responsible sourcing manager. And Deborah works very closely with Fairtrade and Algie. M&S has 100% commitment to Fairtrade coffee, and in fact contributes more Fairtrade premium through tea and coffee than any other UK retailer. So sits squarely behind these commitments. And then we have Eduarda from Algie, and Eduarda has a long kind of history of working in coffee as a woman, both kind of in origin, but also experience kind of across Europe as well. And Algie have a long-term commitment and dedication to ethical and sustainable trading, which she'll be talking more about today. So a great panel that is going to enable a really rich discussion. And what I want to do first of all is start with Luzmila, who's being carefully, because helped by Kieran, who's the translator. And so hopefully the connection will work. And we'll be able to hear from Luzmila. So over to you, Luzmila. I'd love to hear more from you about kind of your background working with coffee. What are the kind of things that you've seen facing women? And kind of share your story, if that's okay. Thanks.
Buenas tardes para todos. Es un gran gusto estar con ustedes y también desear un feliz aniversario a Algie.
Kieran, you're on mute.
First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And obviously, I'd like to wish Algie a very happy 25th anniversary.
Bueno, mi nombre es Luzmila Loayza Feliú. Soy la responsable de efectuar las ventas de exportación, también hacer la logística de los embarques en la cooperativa agraria Frontera San Ignacio, la cual está ubicada al noroeste de Perú y fue fundada en 1968. Actualmente cuenta con 432 miembros, hombres y mujeres.
Okay, so as you've heard, my name is Luzmila Loayza Feliú, and I'm responsible for kind of export sales and logistics and shipments in our Cooperativa Agraria Frontera San Ignacio. And I've had this role since 2010. The cooperative is based in Northwest Peru and was founded in 1968. And currently we have 432 members, both male and female coffee producers of Arabica coffee.
Sinceramente no ha sido un camino fácil de recorrer, ya que desde hace años las organizaciones de productores han sido un escenario de trabajo mayormente liderado y manejado por varones. Y percibía que no había mucha confianza en los logros que pudiera tener el trabajo de una mujer. Así que la única manera de demostrarlo era con mucho esfuerzo y con resultados.
So it's not been an easy road as a woman within coffee, given that for years producer organizations, that's been a work setting mostly led and managed by men. And I felt there was not much confidence in what women could achieve in this field. So I felt that the only way to demonstrate this was through, real-time, real-world results, lots of effort and hard work to bring about these results.
Cuando ingresé a la cooperativa vi con preocupación que prácticamente dependían de un solo mercado y que tenían gran potencial de producción, pero que solamente estaban exportando menos de la mitad del volumen que actualmente estamos embarcando. El resto se iba a los mercados locales con precios mucho más bajos. Y por ello fue muy importante que la cooperativa se actualizara en los nuevos conceptos y exigencias que tenían los mercados internacionales.
So when I arrived and I entered the cooperative, I was very much concerned about this dependence on a single market, given that if you think about less of the amount we now currently ship was at that time being exported, the rest was being sold at local market, with at very low prices. So I felt it was really important that as a cooperative, we were up to date in terms of technology and concepts, but also very, very aware of the demands of international markets for our future success.
La cooperativa ha logrado una evolución positiva y actualmente cuenta ya con una cartera de varios clientes con los que se tiene una buena relación sostenible de confianza, y entre los cuales está Algie, el doctor D.R. Wayfield. También ha sido de mucha importancia contar con el soporte de organizaciones como Fairtrade, que permiten al productor tener el respaldo con precios mínimos más justos.
So the cooperative has done really well and started to have a really positive evolution, and currently count on some really fantastic clients and a really good portfolio of clients. So clients such as Algie and D.R. Wakefield. And that's been really important, the support of these organizations, as well as the support of the Fairtrade Foundation. It just allows the producers to have this support and get better prices for their coffee.
En este proceso se pudo apreciar también a un grupo que no había sido muy visible durante años, que es el grupo de mujeres productoras, las cuales trabajan arduamente en el campo, en las labores de la casa, en la crianza de animales, pero sobre todo en el cuidado de su familia. En los reportes de trazabilidad podíamos ver que los cafés, muchos de los cafés de alta calidad venían justamente de productoras mujeres. Y por lo tanto era importante resaltar su rol dentro de la cooperativa. Es así que en el 2012 se formó dentro de la cooperativa el Comité de Mujeres. Y ha sido muy importante que trabajen como un grupo organizado y en equipo. Actualmente se les permite a las mujeres una participación más activa que antes. También pueden ser miembros hasta de las juntas directivas de la cooperativa, y desde el 2016 se ha logrado tener una marca diferenciada de café llamada Las Damas de San Ignacio. Asimismo también tenemos el apoyo de la cooperativa para desarrollar proyectos en actividades alternativas al café, como son la producción de la miel de abeja, creación de biohuertos para obtener productos para el consumo y también para la venta local, y también proyectos sobre hacer artesanía que ellas mismas hacen y venden localmente, ¿no? Y la idea es seguir creciendo en más proyectos.
So during this process, when I joined the cooperative, I felt there was a group that just wasn't very visible despite the work they were doing. And this had been happening over years, which is obviously women producers who were not just working hard in the field, they were working hard at home, they were rearing small animals, but ultimately they were caring for their family. And we started to see in the traceability reports that many of these good coffees were coming from these women producers. So I felt it was really important to highlight the work that they were doing. So in 2012, the Women's Committee was set up within the cooperative, which was important because it was an organized group that were able to work as a team. And now they're able to actively participate within training courses. They're also allowed to be members of the board of directors within the cooperative. And importantly, since 2016, we managed to create a differentiated brand of coffee, which is called Las Damas de San Ignacio, the Women of San Ignacio. So likewise, with the support of this cooperative, the committee has managed to embark upon different projects, non-coffee projects, shall we say, such as the production and sale of honey, the creation of bio gardens where fruit and vegetables are able to be produced and then sold locally for local consumption. And then also the producers themselves have started to handcraft items that they make themselves and they sell themselves as well. So it's very much an idea that there are other things that are being created to develop the cooperative.
That's great. Can I ask a quick question of Luzmila? Is that all right? Just to interject, I think that's really fascinating. And I think what's interesting, just one of the points that you raised, that this is important for female empowerment, but actually, I think you said that women produce a higher quality of coffee. Can you say just a bit more about that, if that's right? Why is that?
Luzmila, una pregunta también. Muchas gracias por compartir todo lo que has compartido hasta ahora mismo. Pero obviamente hemos hablado del empoderamiento de la mujer, pero también hablaste de la calidad del café que las mujeres producen. ¿Puedes hablar un poco del por qué, el motivo de ser de alta, más calidad, el café que se produce en las mujeres?
Sí, bueno, dentro del proceso de empoderar a la mujer dentro de la cooperativa estaba que ellas tenían que encontrar cómo resaltar su papel dentro de la cooperativa. Y una de esas maneras era demostrando que podían trabajar mucho para lograr una buena calidad en su producto. Entonces, todos los lotes que ellas tratan de llevar a la cooperativa para que pueda ser vendido como las Damas de San Ignacio, lo trabajan de una manera tan cuidadosa que logran que sus tazas logren muy buenos puntajes.
So first and foremost, with regard to empowerment, it was about the women producers trying to find a role within the cooperative and also showing how hard they could work and work so hard to the extent that they produced high quality coffee. But then going back to the actual batches that they were producing, we found that this coffee that we produced, obviously Las Damas de San Ignacio, this specific brand, we found that the women took such care in terms of the finer details within that coffee production that it translated to a really good cup of coffee that was getting high points in terms of tasting. And so that's that extra special care that they took kind of translated to the quality in cup.
Great, that's fascinating. I want to get hold of some of that coffee. Sorry, I interrupted. Luzmila, do you want to carry on? I think you were finishing kind of your story.
Luzmila, si quieres continuar, también acaba de decir que le encantaría probar una taza del café de esas Damas de San Ignacio, pero si quieres seguir con la última párrafo que ibas a saltar.
Bueno, finalmente me gustaría mencionar que las productoras y todas las mujeres que trabajamos en la cooperativa tenemos muy claro que el propósito no es competir con los productores varones, sino apoyar para que se pueda lograr más éxitos y desarrollo empresarial en la cooperativa.
So finally, I think it was really important to highlight and to mention that women producers within the cooperative, it's not about competing with our male counterparts. It's about supporting them and you know, achieving success on the whole for our business, so that we can develop the cooperative in the future and achieve even greater results collectively.
Thank you. I think it's quite an interesting point, actually. We often see women supporting men, I imagine, across the supply chain, not just in origin, but you know, it's quite a typical role that females play. Eduardo, could I bring you in? I mean, have you seen that kind of role from women in your experiences?
I have actually, both at Origin and at home. In my own team, head of coffee sourcing is a woman. Sustainability manager is a woman, and I hear that word all the time in the office: supporting, assisting, helping. Very few times I hear sort of dominant words: leading, deciding. So women are very caring and have a sort of different management style than men, in my view. And I hear it as well from colleagues. Operations manager for a roaster, actually, in Eastern Europe, uses the same terminology. It doesn't matter who wins. It's not a competition. It's just getting the end result. That's really important, to get the end result. And that seems to be quite a sort of common view that women tend to adopt. That's my experience. And at Origin, I've seen it sometimes in really ways that you don't expect. Women are sort of shadows. And adopt this sort of background position. They stay in the background. So it could be that a couple, man and wife, husband and wife, go to the bank to get credit. And this applies, for example, for Brazil, where I've seen it. And the husband sits at the front and the wife sits at the back. And they're talking to the bank manager to get some credit. And the bank manager explains details. And he will turn back to his wife and ask, is that what we want? Is that okay? And the wife will nod, yes, that's okay. And the husband will turn back to the bank manager again and say, yes, that's exactly what I want. So women take this very sort of background position where they don't need to be sort of facing the sort of the big stage. They're quite happy to stand back. And I've seen it in other ways. So Luzmila was talking about biogardens and honey production. I've seen the wives of coffee farmers who stand back as their husbands explain the challenges of having a coffee farm and prices and harvesting. And then you ask the wife, and how do you support your husband, and what do you think? And some of them say, well, coffee is not really my main thing. That's more his thing. I like milk. I have a couple of cows, and I've started, I have milk for the house, and I've started making yogurt. And we go, oh wow, yogurt, fantastic. And then this story appears that actually this lady's not just making yogurt. She's got a little room. She's got training. She went on training courses. She's got a sterilized room. She's producing flavored yogurt. She's producing cheese. She's feeding her family and selling to the wider community, and has her own business, but very understated, very much in the background, very quiet, very calmly going about their business. So yes, that's my experience.
Thank you.
Those words are they very resonate with me.
I think the importance is to get men to support women as well. So it's it's equal. Justine, can I bring you in? Could you talk a bit about the similarities that you might see in Uganda? I imagine there's a lot of similarities around visibility of women having to work hard to demonstrate what they're capable of. Could you talk also about Fairtrade and the solutions that Fairtrade delivers to help tackle these issues?
Thank you. This is Justine. What Eduardo has said is similar to what is happening in Uganda and in East Africa, where I support 15 small producer organizations in coffee. The producers are usually men. It's male-dominated patriarchal society, whereby they own the land and the women work on that land. So they work together with their husbands, they work together with their fathers when they are growing the coffee. But when the proceeds come out, they have no ownership. The ownership goes to the man. He's the one who decides where to sell the coffee. He's the one who joins the cooperatives. But with our support as Fairtrade Africa, we have taken the Fairtrade standard as a tool for empowerment. It's a tool for empowerment whereby we believe that gender equality is what will bring sustainability in growing coffee. So with the standard, producers are audited to see whether they have policies that encourage inclusivity of women. And with that, we have seen changes taking place. For example, we have a good story in Kenya, whereby the women in the Rift Valleys were given coffee bushes and they were able to grow their own coffee. And during that project called Growing Women in Coffee, we saw the women improving the qualities of the coffee. We saw the yields increasing, and they formed their own associations and societies. They were able to bulk their coffee, came up with a coffee brand, a Fairtrade brand called Zawadi Coffee. It's on the shelf. They are getting more money. During the project, they learned that growing coffee is not just about the normal way of production, but you have to employ sustainable agricultural practices. You have to think about the climate change issues. You have to think about the health of the woman who uses firewood, and they came up with gas for cooking. So we are seeing a change in their way of life. The women are able to contribute to children's school fees. They have also come up with other products like maize. They have a maize meal. They sell the maize and they get more money. But back to Uganda, we are also seeing it's happening. Women coming together, and they are now looking at coffee as a family business. They're not looking at it as a business for the men because of the fair trade standards and empowerment, the trainings they have gone through. They come together and they are diversifying, coming up with weaving of baskets and so on. So we know that the fair trade standard is not just a tool for compliance, but it's a tool for empowerment. We are seeing women coming to the boardrooms. They are speaking out.
Have we lost Justine?
Board the coffee baristas. Oh, sorry. We are seeing women becoming baristas. We are seeing women becoming coffee roasters. We are seeing women becoming traders. So we even have a 100% women cooperative for coffee, fair trade certified in Eastern Uganda. So we believe that it's fair trade as a compliance organization is not just bringing compliance for ethical production in terms of good quality, but also for empowerment of the women.
Thank you. I think that's just brilliant. That really brings the passion in. Yeah, it's not just compliance, it's about empowerment. And also all those things that you've just listed, that it's not just about female empowerment as a sole outcome. It has that multiplier effect, getting more children into school, income diversification, even tackling climate change and climate adaptation, health, keeping families together. There's so much that it enables. Thank you. I'm going to bring in Deborah now. So Deborah, it'd be great to hear from you at M&S a bit more about what you're doing to tackle these issues through your supply chain. And actually in particular, kind of what would your call to UK retailers or UK industry be? What should the wider sector do? Big question.
Okay. Yeah, big question. Look, firstly, thank you so much for inviting M&S to this panel discussion. It's really great to be part of it and to be here. And on a personal level, I feel I should add that, as a woman and mother of 2 young daughters, I feel really strongly about, empowering women and girls, everything we're talking about, hopes and dreams, and, a fundamental leveling of the playing field now and of the future. So, it's maybe worth a bit of background briefly about M&S's partnership with Matthew Algie and Fairtrade. So we've worked with Algie as a supplier partner for over 20 years. And in 2006, M&S moved to Fairtrade tea and coffee. So all the tea and coffee we sell, you know, whether that's in cups in our cafes or on shelves in our stores, it's 100% Fairtrade. And I think so to the question around what that really means and the part that we play. So our 100% commitment, which M&S is really proud of, means that we sell more own label tea and coffee than any other UK retailer. And you mentioned that at the start, Kerrina. And in 2021, so this meant that we raised over 1.2 million in Fairtrade premium for Fairtrade tea and coffee farmers and workers. And that was 30% of the total premiums for tea and coffee raised across UK retail. And in coffee alone, M&S bought the equivalent of 266 million cups of coffee on Fairtrade terms for coffee producers and their communities all over the world. So I guess that's, I suppose, the first point in terms of, you know, our volume allowing us to really support in tackling issues through raising Fairtrade premiums at scale. Then I think there's maybe another point for us around longevity and quality of partnership. So, you know, we've been working with Algie, as I said, for over 20 years. And these long-standing relationships are really important to us as a business. And with Fairtrade, through Fairtrade, M&S have many long-standing producer relationships, some, you know, decades long. And those are really key to building strong partnerships and to addressing some of those issues that we're discussing. So, you know, this is all about fundamental social and economic change, which is a long-term process. So, you know, you've got to be committed for the long term to really build those partnerships. And I guess also I would say that our partnership with Algie and Fairtrade allows a business like ours at one end to see and better understand all the issues that we're discussing today. So through forums like this one, making that connection, and also in the visibility that we have through the case studies and the information that Fairtrade and Algie provide us with. So we can really listen and understand the issues, the challenges, where we're able to have impact. And that's also something that M&S makes publicly available. So through our interactive map, we're the only UK retailer, I believe, who has all our Fairtrade tea and coffee sourcing groups to producer level publicly available. And I think, to your point around UK retail, that's a really important part of the UK consumer piece. And I'll talk about that shortly more, I'm sure.
Right, now my turn to go off mute. Thank you. And Deborah, what would be your challenge then to UK retail? Just that kind of second part. Like what would you ask them to do to get to a similar point?
Well, look, I'm not sure that that I will make that call, but I can say in terms of what we're doing as a business, I know that we and our counterparts in retail, you know, we have an important role to play in bringing all these messages to the UK consumer. So for M&S, whether that's a customer enjoying a cup of coffee in our cafe or buying their favorite pack of coffee from one of our stores, you know, there's a connection that we as retailers can help to drive between consumers here around the challenges and opportunities that we're hearing about today for women in coffee, and how the UK consumers' buying choices can be part of that change and really creating that link. And M&S, for example, we've recently run our Look Behind the Label campaign, for example, where we invite our customers to take a closer look at the stories behind all their favorite products, including coffee. So those are some of the ways in which we can sort of create that link between the UK consumer and lots of the brilliant things that we're hearing about today.
Yeah, it's really important that consumers can make that choice and be part of the change. Thank you. Eduardo, I'm going to bring you in now. You mentioned that you've been working coffee for a long time and you've seen kind of changes over the years. Can you talk a bit more about that? I mean, Luzmila talked a bit about it at the beginning, Justine's touched on it, but how have women in coffee and their roles evolved over time? And what has Matthew Algie done to support that?
So I've been working in coffee now for 20 years, and at Matthew Algie we are 100% committed to fair trade, and we're not wavered since we began, and we hope that that relationship will continue 25 years from now, and that will remain. To me, it's important to understand why that gender gap exists in the coffee industry, especially at producer level. And we can't forget that it's really important to understand why that is. And when Deborah said understanding the issues is really important, I think that's crucial. So if you think about it, I'm Portuguese by birth, and I come from a country where culturally quite different from the UK, and women are not expected to achieve, have great desire to have great careers. Being a mother, being a homemaker is perhaps what was expected, at least in my generation. And for me, education was pivotal in changing my outlook on life and allowing me the choices that I have today. And I've heard both Justine and Luzmila talk about the information access to women is really important, education, being at par with men, and being able to have access to the same resources. So my background, in a country where women and men, there's a big gap. If you think about it, Portugal, women voted for the first time in 1933. Brazil, women voted for the first time in 1932. And in a lot of Latin American countries, actually mid-40s, mid-50s. So that starts setting the scene for why this gap exists. So very strong cultural influences that create this gap that exists in a lot of coffee producing nations, which is very difficult to change. So that time is needed to change, time is needed to educate. And this is where fair trade comes in. Fair trade normalizes through standards. Equality is ingrained in the fair trade standard. It's what the standard is about. There is no gender gap. There is no discrimination between men and women when it comes to the fair trade standard. So it allows countries who perhaps are working in cultures which are really difficult to overcome that change of land ownership or being able to invest. Suddenly, if you work in coffee, fair trade makes that accessible. You now have the power in your own small world of a coffee co-op to normalize it. And that's what I see more and more, that perhaps people aren't aware that fair trade has such a strong stance on gender equality. But having a panel like this allows people to perhaps understand better what the standards, fair trade standards, are about, and how actually they allow coffee producing nations to make change faster, which is what I've been seeing and what is wonderful to see.
Thank you. Now, I think it's time to open up questions to the audience. I'm hoping that a few have come through the chat. Amy, are you there? If you are, could you let us know if there are any questions? Thank you.
Yes, hi. Yes, would welcome questions from folks who are listening in. We've had one from Kate from Falcon Coffees. She says, I'm wondering if your great panelists could weigh in on whether they think the lack of equity between women in coffee and their spouses is more cultural, or are there governmental roadblocks that are driving the majority of equity issues? She has given an example. Shall I give her example as well? So, for example, I've heard that some women can't be on land titles if they are married in certain origins. It would go to their spouses. Perhaps women are not able to be on the bank paperwork alone without a male co-signer, etc. What do your guests see as some of the biggest barriers? Thank you, she says.
Justine, can I come to you on that question? Because it is a very valuable question. We've been talking a lot about the changes on the ground and the culture. But yes, government is very important, and policies and what women are able and not able to do. Do you see that in Uganda?
Yes, it's happening now because of the policies that government has. The policies encourage gender equity and equality. So now we can see women also having land titles as individuals, but also as husband and wife. It's happening right now. There is a lot of change happening right now.
Thank you, but I'm sure more change is needed, but it's good that it's starting. Eduardo, have you seen that over kind of time that you've been working in coffee? Has government changed its position? Has it enabled women to do more?
I think change is slow, and I think I understand the difficulties. Changing laws is a slow process, but changing mindsets, I think, is even slower. I like case studies where at the end of, let's say, of a project, men are asked, what has this contributed to your understanding of the gender issues between men and women? And I enjoy seeing men to say, oh, I now value more what my wife does at home and how difficult it is for her to manage the household and help on the farm. And I now contribute to the household chores. I mean, you think, for example, in the UK, you might think, well, that's normal. But actually, that's a huge achievement to have that change of mindset in husbands, in sons, in cousins, and to have that change of that perception that a woman's value is through what they do in the home and the rest is sort of ignored. I think perhaps the two changes don't run fast enough and in parallel. And I think panels like this and events like this that promote that gender equality makes everyone aware that gender equality and human development are connected and they can't be separated. And they promote economic growth. So I think when governments start understanding that actually this connection promotes economic growth, there'll be more investment in making that equity possible, so that Justine is saying this is now happening in my country, that maybe other countries follow suit, or we don't have to wait so long. It's 2022. We don't have to wait so long.
Thank you. Amy, do we have another question?
Yeah, we've got quite a few coming in now. One specifically for Justine, actually. They're asking, have you found there to be any struggle from producers to stick to their dedication for female inclusivity promises they have made? Oh, and yes. Also, sorry, a second one for Justine. Will I say it just now as well? They're also asking, are there any obvious differences from the 100% female coffee producers versus other producers in the area that you work in?
I missed out on the second one, my network.
Sorry, they were asking, are there any obvious differences from the 100% female coffee groups that you work with compared to others in Africa, in East Africa?
All right. Yeah, going back to the first question, I would say that according to my experience, I think I missed the question. Sorry, come again.
We can hear you, Justine. Yeah, it was the question about, you talked about 100% female cooperative. What are the key differences between that female cooperative and the kind of more traditional cooperative?
Oh, okay. The difference between a 100% women cooperative is that when they bulk their coffee, when they sell their coffee, it attracts more price, especially from those that buyers that are looking for women produced coffee. So there is that additional money that is given to them. But of course, whereas it's 100% membership, but we make sure that they work together with the men. Among the staff, they are also men. But also when we are training them, we encourage them to look at coffee as a family business. So the other counterpart where we find that it's both male and female, we are seeing that the males still dominate, like the boards. So the decisions are made by the men. And when they decide to select a woman on the board, she will not be in the key position. They will say, okay, let the woman be vice chairperson. But a vice chairperson never takes a lot of responsibility as long as the chairperson is there. So, but where we find that they are female, 100% female, it means they bring all their views together and there is a lot of dedication to the cooperative. And we see that even when they come to start savings and loans associations, they are more effective when they're women saving together. Unlike where you find that male and female are working together. In most of the cooperatives where you find male and female, circles have not been able to stand like we find with those that are 100% female. That is something that I've seen. And when it comes to quality, because much of the post-harvest handling is done by women. So you find that you find fewer defects in coffee produced by women, 100% women, compared to coffee produced by male and female. Because the women put in, I think, a lot of, they are to the detail. You find that they'll have maybe 2 to 3 defects compared to where we find coffee more defects. Maybe that is the experience that I've seen.
Thank you, that's fascinating. And we heard something similar from Luzmila. Females have good attention to detail. Amy, if I may put the second question to Luzmila, actually, just because Justine's been answering a lot of questions, which is around, I think the question was around the challenges to kind of keep that dedication to female inclusivity. Are there things that have kind of affected progress? Maybe like the pandemic, I imagine that might have made things a bit more of a struggle. So what things have maybe kind of impacted that dedication to female empowerment?
Te toca, Luzmila.
Bueno, de hecho la pandemia ha afectado a todos, ¿no? Porque las mujeres y sus familias tuvieron que aislarse durante ese tiempo, tratar de trabajar el doble de jornadas porque no conseguían personal de apoyo para las cosechas. Así que ellas jugaron un rol más importante todavía porque a pesar del trabajo de casa, tenían que duplicar su trabajo en el campo también para apoyar en la cosecha, ¿no?
Yeah, so to be honest, you know, the pandemic affected all of us, and particularly when it came to, you know, coffee production. And it meant that, you know, women and families had to obviously be completely isolated and stay at home. But then when it came to working, it meant that women actually played a doubly important role, because when it came to harvesting, there just weren't enough bodies to do this harvesting job. So it meant women had to work doubly as hard, not just in terms of harvesting, but also the work they were doing at home. So they were both supporting their households and providing support in the fields as well. So in fact, while it was a tough time, the pandemic, it meant that women were doubly as important.
Thank you. Amy, do we have another question? Maybe one for Deborah or Eduarda.
Okay, for Deborah Eduarda, yes. We had a good one about how can our coffee shop do more to communicate these stories?
Good question. So I think there's lots of opportunity to drive that connection and that link that I was referring to earlier on. In coffee shops, that could be signage, that could be different messaging that we can give, and bringing out some of those real stories. So I'll refer to one that we highlighted through our social media at M&S recently, but is, you know, a message that goes across the piece, really, in terms of a mother and daughter coffee producing team in our supply chain, and they're part of a co-op that's used Fairtrade premiums to plant new trees, to protect their coffee plants and to promote biodiversity. They've launched a water protection project which helps all the farmers in the cooperative to avoid polluting water with the processing waste. And they've also had training on how to be more resilient to climate change, all through the Fairtrade premium. And the Fairtrade Premium in this instance has also helped to fund free health clinics, and that's included a series of women's health checkups such as breast exams and smear tests. So essentially there's a way in which we can bring a lot of these stories to life, and plenty of opportunities through, as I was saying, through either our cafes or also through, you know, messaging on our packs and so on too in store. So plenty of opportunity.
Thank you. Well, did you have anything to add to that in terms of how Matthew Algie can support?
Yeah, from a roast point of view, it's making social media be the voice of the producer, which often is missing, I think. And so to be able to tell the stories that Deborah is just mentioning, so people can see the reality of what it's like to work on a coffee farm, to be part of a coffee co-op, and the challenges that come with it. And perhaps we shouldn't forget that when women are allowed to make decisions, and when women are allowed to invest the proceeds of their hard work, they tend to invest it slightly different. So women invest a great deal in their children's education. And in my view, that allows us to then invest in adapting to climate change, into awareness, into good health, into keeping children at school, and perhaps allowing them to see that there is a career in coffee. So when you invest in women, you don't invest in just one thing. You're investing in youth education, you're investing in adapting to climate change, you're investing in a much wider set of variables that make a big difference to when you work in a coffee producing country. So I think we should remember that investing in women, it's not just about women empowerment. You actually can change the way a society is structured and how it develops, how it goes further. And I would love to hear Justine's view or Luzmila's view, because personally, I think, and I've seen it, women farmers showing so much pride in the education of their children, and having folders with laminated certificates and telling the story of how they are now baristas, and they did a Q grading competition, and they can roast, and look, he's developed his own label for a coffee, and he's roasting his own coffee. Or their daughter is now wanting to go into land management, and they encourage their daughters to stay in education. So I think investing in women is much bigger than what we think initially, and that's why having that support there from Fairtrade projects, from the Premium, or from roasters focusing on particular projects where women empowerment is at the front, can make such a big difference.
Thank you. Amy, we've probably got time for 2 more questions. And I think...
Sure. This one is asking, do you see more desire for young women in particular to become involved in coffee and see it as a career with potential? What are the biggest challenges here? What do you think is important to facilitate this?
Justine, can I come to you again? If you heard that question, so particularly talk about young women. What are the opportunities for young women to kind of advance their opportunities through coffee?
Yes. The young women have opportunities in that prior to our age, there was no technology, but right now there's a lot of technology, and the young women are willing to take up technology, whereby they can use it for growing coffee in a better way, and not looking at it as a burden, but looking at it as an opportunity to help families grow coffee as a business. So once the young women are able to embrace technology, also looking at growing coffee, not using the hand hoe, but mechanizing it, especially in Africa, then they can be able to take it up. Right now, the older women are more burdened in that they have to do everything using their own hands. But if the young women can come up with new technology, even using the animals to help them to maybe
Oh, I was hanging on. Oh, that you're back.
To help them coffee, then they can. Hello?
We lost you when you were talking
about
animals.
Did you lose me?
Only on when you're talking about animals, young women using technology or using animals, and then we lost you at that point.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the young women have that opportunity because they have gone to school. They know how to use the technology. They can use the animals they have. They have also the knowledge of accessing funds through the banks, which other women used not to do. For example, they can say they can get loans for crop financing. They can negotiate contracts, which other women couldn't do previously. And the other thing is that the women also understand the market techniques. When we talk about using Twitter, using Instagram, using all those social media, they can use it for marketing women's coffee. They can use websites, which the older women couldn't do. And I think that's where we're going.
That's great. Thank you, Justine. And I know at 3 o'clock this afternoon, we're talking specifically about young people in coffee. And I think we have a young female farmer talking actually in that session. So do join that session later. Amy, do we have another question?
Yes, a couple of people are asking about how men tend to react to initiatives to support and empower women. Are they supportive of them? That kind of question.
Luzmila, could we come to you on that one? How supportive are the men of female empowerment? Do they see it as an opportunity?
Bueno, hasta el momento el apoyo que veo es el permitir que las mujeres podamos desarrollarnos y luego ellos pueden reconocer ya los resultados de ese trabajo, ¿no? Y por ahora el que nos permitan desarrollarnos es muy importante porque de esa manera vamos a poder nosotros conseguir resultados que ellos van a poder darse cuenta de que somos también un buen apoyo dentro de la organización.
Yeah, so right now, their support is that they allow us to develop ourselves as women. And as they start to see the results, you know, that's what we need. We need them to allow us to develop and to improve and to get the results. And I think just that support up to now will allow them to start to realize how important we are within the cooperative and within the results we get. So it's about this allowance at the moment.
Can I say that I understand, and it feels a little bit sad and a little bit good, you know, that the word allowed is used when I know if I said that to my daughter and she's in her 20s, she would not be amused. I think it's really important for young women to see strong role models in other women and see that other women have, you know, gone through maybe some challenges of having to overcome perhaps male-dominated industries where they have to operate, but seeing that as a success, like Luzmila, Justine, Deborah, all in positions of leadership, where they can make decisions, where they can lead, where they can nurture and mentor. It's really important, and having support systems nearby, whereas it's parents or sometimes teachers are incredibly supportive, can be the difference between a young woman deciding to pursue a career in coffee and aim to achieve higher than just work on the land, but maybe want to be, you know, vice president, want to, you know, do something bigger. Having strong role models in women, I think, is really important. And I think I've been told before that that's scientifically proven or scientifically true, that if women see strong role models in their mothers and women around them, that it's really encouraging to make change. And I think younger generations now are much more self-aware, confident, have access to technology, which means have access to information. And I think that makes it really important that they can perhaps not have the same challenges that we are facing here. For example, me in my mid-50s, I can look back and see how challenging it was in my mid-20s. I don't think our children, especially if you have daughters, will face the same difficulties. So I'm very proud to be on a panel with such strong role models. But I think that's incredibly important.
Completely agree. Thank you, Eduarda. So I'm just going to finish with one final question, and if it's okay, I'm going to put it to each of you. So I'm just going to ask you to look into the future and look at 2025 or 2030. What does good look like for women in coffee? What do you want to see for women working in coffee? And what role do we need to take to get there?
I can say that I hope that we don't need panels like this anymore to make a point, that the point is already there and that the situation has been normalized and a gender gap no longer exists and we don't have to discuss it, because women and men will be at the same level, have access to the same resources, same information, and so therefore everyone is the same. That's what I would love to see. I think that would be an enormous change.
Thank you. Justine, what would you like to see?
Working with Fairtrade, I see that the Fairtrade standard is a tool for compliance. But I would want to see that the Fairtrade standard is just a normal way of living, whereby we have influenced the communities where we are working, we have influenced the people around us, and we find that gender equality is normal. It's not just asked for. We don't have to audit people to think about gender. Then the other thing I would like to see that women, like I said, embrace technology in all aspects. Then I would want to see more trust being built among the buyers of our coffees, trust from those that give access to finance, the social lenders, believing in women that once you give them the money for crop finance, they'll be able to return after they have sold their coffee. I would want to see that the markets also target women coffee, because it is really wonderful coffee. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a win-win. Win for the markets, win for the consumers, and for the women. Female coffee. Luzmila, what would you like to see in 2025, 2030?
Me gustaría ver que todas las mujeres de la cooperativa estén bien capacitadas, preparadas, liderando, gerenciando cooperativas. También me gustaría ver que los hijos de los productores ya no tengan que emigrar a las grandes ciudades por trabajo, sino que las fincas puedan ser su fuente rentable para ellos y sus familias. También veo una tostaduría manejada por las mujeres vendiendo el propio café con la marca de las damas de San Ignacio. Y también veo que en el futuro las mujeres van a poder sentir que se les respeta, se les considera como un papel importante dentro de sus organizaciones.
So what I'd like to see in the future is women taking on, important roles within cooperatives, not just owning the cooperatives, but having, a stronger voice and maybe having leading roles within decisions that are made within those cooperatives. I'd also like to see sons, daughters of coffee producers not needing to go and seek work further afield or to leave their local area, to emigrate because they need to find a job by which they can live from. I want them to be able to stay at home and produce coffee and find it to be something that can then pay them a decent living. I'd also like to see women selling locally and roasting their own coffee. So Las Damas de San Ignacio, this brand that we've created, we'd love to see them selling and roasting their own coffee locally. And finally, what I'd like to see is that women are respected, that they're treated in the same way, that they're listened to, that they're respected in the same way that men are.
Thank you. And finally, Deborah, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I echo absolutely everything that's been said. Wouldn't it be great if these sorts of discussions are mainstreamed and are so commonplace that that we're really sort of raising a new generation of, you know, women in leadership in coffee production. And look, it would also be great to see even more of these links between the UK consumer and these brilliant women in coffee, and just understanding those stories and making those connections even more, so that, you know, coffee production is an aspirational, you know, really exciting way of life for those in coffee supply chains.
Thank you. And coffee brings people together, so why shouldn't it bring people together from across the supply chain? So I completely agree with you. So that brings us to the end of this discussion. I've learned so much. I want to thank all of you. It's been both kind of eye-opening about some of the challenges that I didn't realise were there, but also really inspiring about the solutions. So, you know, thank you to all of you for your input. It was really, really helpful. Now, question back to the audience that's just popped up here. So further to this session, could you just answer these questions? Do you have a greater understanding of the challenges being faced by female coffee producers and some of the ways that these are being addressed? If you could just pop your answers up, it'd be really helpful for us to see. Great. I'm not sure if we're getting the results now or we might get them later, but hopefully everyone's answered. So I just want to say, oh, here we go. Oh, there we go. 100% true. There we go. Good outcome. Can't get better than that. So thank you so much, Luzmila and Kieran. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Justine. Thank you, Eduarda. Really, really passionate and valuable and rich discussion. I'm just going to encourage everyone, well, firstly, actually to join the 3 o'clock session, which is looking at young farmers, and hopefully the link will be in the chat for people to join. If you have any further questions, do reach out to your Matthew Algie account manager that can help answer anything and support you. And finally, I'm just going to say, go and have a coffee right now. Go and have a lunchtime, or if you're in Peru, a morning, or in Uganda, an afternoon cup of coffee, and just think of what's happened behind that cup of coffee and that story that sits behind it, both the good and the amazing stuff. So the tougher and the amazing stuff that we've heard about today. So thank you, everyone, and goodbye. That's the end of the session. Goodbye. Thank you.